this is how we travel to go watch the Thalapathy film.
Do you guys have a card, phone number?
514.
Did you want to upgrade the card?
Actually, yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, it's definitely worth it.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! You ready? What's up, y'all? It's your boy Shazne. Just woke up, had a great day yesterday. The moment has arrived. The king, the legend, the greatest, the GOAT, the king of Hollywood is on the screen right now that everybody's celebrating. And these are my thoughts on Leo. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I'm kind of doing a hybrid with the vlog slash thoughts on together. I thought it'd be kind of a fun way to do so. So, my experience with Leo. In most cases, when a Thalapathy film drops, I was never a fan of the phrase, it's a good film for Thalapathy fans. It is strictly for Thalapathy fans. Usually, I don't look at that as a compliment, but more often than not, it's a pretty lazy, but an actually somewhat accurate way of representing most of those films. Those are the kind of films filmmakers usually make with Thalapathy. Using Vijay as an example, where you have Rayappan, an incredible character and performance by Thalapathy, surrounded by a lot of unnecessary commercial elements from my perspective, from my experiences. But there's a lot of other people who really enjoys those commercial elements. Thus, that movie making history, right? But those were overall the kind of films that we expect and anticipate. There's going to be something that I love, something that my mom loves, something that my sister loves, something that, every group, every age can love and enjoy. But as an overall film, it never enters a top 10 of the year for me. Waking up today, I am happier as a fan of cinema more so than a fan of Thalapathy, which for me means way more, a lot more. Is something I always wanted to feel on a consistent basis with Thalapathy films. But usually, I could only love and be happy about certain segments of the film and appreciate that and cherish that from Thalapathy. But Leo satisfied me as a fan of cinema. Just not Tamil cinema, just in general. Leo is the closest we've got to a Hollywood classic action genre film in Tamil cinema. But I don't think our people, our audience, will get that vibe until it marinates. This gonna be one of those films like Heram, of its caliber, of its genre, Vinay Tanduvarvaya, of its caliber, of its genre, Varnamayram, Mumbai Express, Alavandan. These movies that I'm naming are quite unique in their genre and execution. When those movies first came out, the opening weekend, some was able to succeed post that launch, like Vinay Tanduvarvaya, But we've heard Gautam Menon spoke about how when people came out of Vinetanduvarwaya, many felt underwhelmed. They couldn't understand what were they watching, what is the point of this film. But over time, the coming weeks, the audience kept coming in, and the movie blossomed to what it was meant to be. But not every film gives that luxury. Heram was a big flop, and that film was a masterpiece. Alavandan is a fantastic, brilliant film, but that was a flop. But now people will look back at it and they can understand, man, we made these kind of movies, but nobody was really there to support it. But that won't be the case with Leo because obviously Thalapathy is built different. So the movie is destroying box office numbers. And the movie still has enough for the mass audience, for those opening weekend, first day, first show audience. There's a lot in here for those people as well. All that said, the storm for Leo is going to hit starting Monday. And that is my prediction on it. Even though you're going to be hearing all the crazy numbers, we've seen nothing yet. Any film lovers who watched the film, came home, slept on it, woke up the next day, that experience, whatever they feel, whether they liked it or not, that is the truth. Leo is not a movie you come out and start screaming about. Leo is a movie you allow it to marinate within you, and the next day you'll know how you truly feel about it. This genre and this type of filmmaking and execution is very new for Tamil cinema. I love watching movies like Leo in Hollywood. Every night here and there, I look for movies like this. Very simple in narrative, and it's very much a character driven internal story. There's a moral gray prospect to it all. Nothing is quite clear, nothing is quite in depth, but it is an experience that you cannot forget. And those kind of movies are very hard to make and very hard to come by because there isn't a mass audience for that, even in Hollywood. So it was very interesting to see, and it was such a pleasure to experience Thalapathy in that kind of a film executed by Lokesh. This is a film that Lokesh delivered a strong foundation for, but it is Thalapathy that carries to a different level. My theory in filmmaking and writing is character over everything. That's what I personally believe in. Everybody has their own rules and own thought process. Mine always has been character over everything. And Leo is another prime example for me to validate that thought process of mine. The story, the narrative is very simple, like John Wick, like Drive, The American, The Predator, Rambo. It's quite simple in that way. But it is what's upon that foundation is what sets the film on fire. And you need a high caliber performer to carry that through. And no one better than the GOAT, Thalapathy Vijay. This is a performance of a lifetime. And I personally do not believe we'll get another on this caliber unless your boy, gets a chance to work with the GOAT. All jokes aside, this performance is evergreen. Thalapathy displayed a masterclass as an actor. The multitude of layers and complexity he brought onto his character was truly transcending. He carried the film from its shortcomings. His performance works in many different perspectives, based on whether it's your first viewing or your second viewing. Lokesh still displayed the same problems that I've had in all of his previous films. And in this one is a little more glaring, yet his strengths are heightened. His character work is the best he's ever written and executed on screen. Ultimately, Lokesh delivered a worthy character-driven film. I'll say this again. I'm happier as a fan of cinema, more so than a fan of Thalapathy, which is what I prefer. Because that just means he's part of that greatness. He's part of that history. I don't need to separate Thalapathy from what I love about cinema and enjoy his movies from a different, unique perspective. No, I want both of it to coexist, to be in hybrid. Thalapathy's greatness and pure cinema together, it is a transcending experience, and Leo is a definitive example of that for me. Apart from Kamal Hassan, Thalapathy is the greatest internal performer in Tamil cinema. He could just stand in a frame and emote so much, tell so much, without having to do much. He can stand still and use his screen presence to deliver an immersion like none other. And to see that on display here to another different playing field, that is the magic. That is the truth right there. Another great prospect to the character, also Lokesh's direction, is the heavy boot characterization of Parthi and lighter on feet characterization of Leo was pure perfection. When you see Parthi fighting, when you see Parthi running, it feels like he's wearing clothes out of metal. He's wearing a boot out of metal. Like there's a stomp in his run. He's heavy. He hits with that old man strength, right? It's aggressive. It can feel chaotic, but there's a lot of power and strength and weight to the way he moves and the way he attacks. Is literally a middle-aged, retired lion. That is the strength in which he fights. And then you see Leo in the flashback. He's so light on his feet. He's super fast. He's super agile. That's the lion in his prime. And that characterization, that difference is crazy because even when you see him in the song, which they goddamn censored, pissed the hell out of me, but I'm not gonna get into that. I'm not gonna get into that. That made me so mad. But you can see when Thalapathy is dancing, nobody, nobody can stand in front of him or beside him. Nobody. He's so agile. He's a 50-year-old man, essentially. And the way he moves, the speed in which he moves, but it's so effortless. You can't even tell. You can only see the difference based on how other people are reacting around him, and they can't keep up. Thalapathy makes it look so easy. But then again, that is also the character Leo. So it was so dope to see Parthi being this grizzled, middle-aged lion and then transition back to seeing Leo in his prime status, super fast and agile. So that was absolutely fantastic. That was some brilliant work by both Thalapathy and Lokesh coming together. So now let's transition to some of the things that didn't work for me. But I will bring it back down to my character theory at the end of this segment. So some of the things that I didn't enjoy, some people really did, but I didn't, was the car chase scene. I wasn't a big fan of that sequence because it just felt way too, not fake is not the term I want to use, but more so cartoony, a little too janky. I love the idea of it. I love the energy of that scene. The way the camera moves, I thought that was exciting and interesting. But the film didn't have the budget to pull that off. It just wasn't tangible for me. It didn't come through in the ways I could tell that it was intended. So that sequence didn't really work for me. But I did love the fight scene there. The fight scene after that chase, that was quite incredible. Another thing that didn't work for me is the flashback fight scene, the introduction fight scene of Leo. That could have been better. I understand what they were going for, the lighter on feet element, which obviously I love and I appreciated, but I wish it was choreographed a little better. Lighter on feet doesn't mean he has to be flying and shit, you know what I'm saying? Like I wish it was a little bit more grounded how Parthi was fighting, but just much more faster, more agile. And you could have done that without having to go with so much wire work in that portion. It wasn't terrible or anything, but it could have been way better. It just felt like a generic Tamil movie fight scene, and it could have been so much more there. I also wasn't a fan of the cutaways in between the Now Ready song. The censoring already pissed me off, and all the intercuts was really effing annoying. It ruined the whole song for me. It was more distracting than immersive. And as a filmmaker, it's such an odd choice and decision on the editing table because you always want to make sure that the audience are always immersed and engaged. But that edit constantly took me out of enjoying whether the scene that was going on or the song that was going on. So that was a very poor choice by Lokesh. It's crazy to me that he did not see that he couldn't feel that jank, that constant cutaway, that distraction, right? Because now you couldn't appreciate either points of that whole song and what was going on behind the scenes. So that was just a poor choice. Maybe it was for a runtime. I don't know what it was. I wouldn't mind sacrificing. I wouldn't even call it a sacrifice, but I wouldn't mind extending the film longer to give me a better overall scene and sequence and impact over this intercuts that was going on that was constantly distracting and took me out of the movie constantly. So that was a choice by Lokesh that I wasn't a big fan of. This one is also on a technical level, and I mean no disrespect. Okay, when I say this, see Thalapathy. Oh, spoilers, by the way. My bad. Spoilers. I'm gonna spoil an element in the film right here. Okay, so if you don't want to watch it further on, I'll put a quotation of spoiler. Thalapathy has a sister, right? Leo has a sister. But what was so really dumb to me is like she's barely in the movie. She's there for like maybe like 5 minutes overall screen time, maybe even less. What is the point of hiring an actor who cannot keep up with Talabadi? Right? She couldn't dance next to him. She was struggling so hard. Her fight scenes weren't that good. Like, why didn't you just hire a great dancer or a great fighter? It wouldn't change nothing. She didn't bring anything to the film, or like it wasn't her fault necessarily. But Lokesh didn't give her much to do as a character, anyways. If she's gonna be a placeholder for a story point, it could have been really anybody. So you should have just chose an actual dancer or an actual fighter, so she could have really stood next to Talabadi, and I would have believed her more. The fact that she was a twin, right? They were both supposed to be this badass because they're both dressed up the same way. So it's implying that she's the other side of the coin of Leo. But when she's like dancing with him or fighting, it just really felt weak. And there's no disrespect towards her. I don't think she probably got enough training, enough time to do all that because she was barely in the movie. So if that was the case, Loki should have done a better job casting somebody who'd be able to do all those things in a short amount of time. So that was another choice, a decision that I just couldn't really wrap my head around. The villains and the execution of them is a very interesting choice. But for me, when I was experiencing, I didn't really miss it much. Wouldn't it have been nice if you got a little bit more from Sanjay Dutt's character because there was an interesting prospect to him? But the execution makes it unnecessary to really know too much about his family and his upbringing of all that. That is not what the movie is about. It was not supposed to be an emotional element. It was supposed to be more of an informational element. And it is quite clear in the way Lokesh executes all the scenes that has a correlation to his past. Right? It's very intentionally written. And the way Talabadi plays it, very nonchalant, very tippy-toey, right? He almost has one foot in front and one foot in the back. He's playing, he's strolling. He's a professional villainous troller. He's done such an amazing job with that. But anyways, so the whole backstory about the villains, I just felt like it was not necessary. You know, it felt really true to the genre in which Lokesh was operating within. It's almost like a Western. Western characters are pretty simple, pretty black and white. Sometimes it could be morally interesting, like Unforgiven and such. Leo is very true to the genre, and everything else around the film is to serve the genre itself. It's essentially how Mad Max Fury Road works. If you break down Mad Max Fury Road on a story level, it might even sound underwhelming. Wait, it's just a chase throughout the entire film? Okay, what is the point of this villain? Oh, the villain is quite one note. Like, if you really break down Mad Max Fury Road, it may seem like a generic movie. That is what Tom Hardy felt. When Tom Hardy was shooting the movie, he really didn't get what he was going for. He wanted something more out of it. But then when Tom Hardy watched the final cut of the film, he understood. He understood what George Miller was doing. Where sometimes genres are hard to understand on a text level. It's really based on the execution and the actor's performance, the character. The action genres are defined by the characters. John Wick's story is as basic as it can get as a revenge tale. But what makes it so iconic is John Wick, Keanu Reeves as John Wick. If you break down all the iconic action genre film, pure action genre film, I'm not talking about action adventure, action fantasy, action sci-fi, pure action genre films, is really all comes down to the character. It's all executed by the foundation laid upon the filmmaker and the actor carrying the film throughout. But if you break it down, which a lot of people seem to be doing, on a story and supporting characters level, not many action genre films really explore deep into those elements. They're in it for a couple of scenes here and there. It's quite simple, actually. It's really about the main character's journey, their moral dilemmas, and how they operate and how they approach the situation, what makes it interesting. You put John Wick in Leo, he would handle that situation much differently. You put Rambo in Leo, Rambo would allow himself to get beaten up. His first instinct wouldn't be to fight back right away. He would allow a little bit of misery to get to him before he goes down. But Parthy is not that way because he's saying, yes, I'm quote unquote living in a different identity right now, but nobody's going to be pushing me around. You know what I'm saying? So even when he had to prove himself that he's innocent, on the shooting range is a great example of this. He doesn't hold back. This is who I am. I am freaking badass. All right, let's get that out of the way, right? But that doesn't make me evil. That doesn't make me a criminal. All right, that doesn't make me a murderer. That is how he's manipulating the system. His honesty, sort of a fake honesty that he displays, is Parthy's strength. And Thalapathy brings that in such a flawless and elegant way. And then if you put Ethan Hunt in Leo's story, he would operate and navigate the situation much differently. Ethan Hunt's first instinct isn't to go all out. He prefers stealth, undercover, disguises. He only refers to violence when it's necessary and absolutely needed. And then let's say if it were James Bond in Leo's situation, oh, he wouldn't give a single F, right? He'd be pulling out that license to kill, and he'd be going all out, and he won't be looking back, right? Like James Bond would be an interesting prospect if he was doing what Leo was doing, and he was living in a different kind of identity. The way he would approach it would be much different. With all of those examples, what I'm trying to say here is that characters define these kind of stories. A great character will save a film from its missteps. And Leo is not perfect. It has things that doesn't work, but the character is so fucking great. It saves the film and actually takes it to a different playing field. And that is what makes Leo, for me, Lokesh's best work. Because Lokesh's strengths are purely defined in Leo. He is a masterclass character, writer, director. Everything else is a hit or miss. Some movies he'll do better, some movies he won't do. But one thing that remains constant is his character writing. With JD, Master, wasn't great. It was a good film, but wasn't great. But JD, incredible character. Kaidi, same thing. I wasn't a big fan of Kaidi. Many people love it. I'm not a big fan of Kaidi at all. But the character, Dilly, next level pure straight fire, right? Vikram, another great example. I had many issues with Vikram. For those who've been watching me knows, Vikram is a good film. But the character Vikram, the way he executed that, the circumstances that character was put in, glorious. And Managaram is another prospect of characters. The setting is something he's familiar with. A lot of it, as he mentioned, was personal. So he laid a foundation, a setting, an area, a city, and then plays these two characters and how these two characters navigate through this rules and system. And that made Managaram what it was. For me, my analysis and my experience with Lokesh's work, it's all been character driven. And I do believe he has another step to take. I still don't think he has made a single great film. All of it has been mostly good, but the man is full of potential. And I do believe and I do hope he'll get there. And Leo is his best work. This is going to age like fine wine. Right now, I stand at a 7.5 out of 10. But after my second viewing, this movie can turn from good to great. That's what it is. Certain movies requires multiple viewings. And a character like Parthy and a character like Leo, the level he hit, the range he got to, it requires multiple viewings to fully grasp the greatness he displayed for all of us to experience. I thought Anirudh did a fabulous job. Anirudh understood what Lokesh was making, and he honored and delivered what the film itself needed. So he made sure that he didn't overextend the BGM. He overhyped stuff. That is not what this movie is. The bedroom conversation scene with Trisha is definitely one of the highlights of the film, and it demonstrates who Parthy really is. That is the scene that defines this character. The GOAT, Thalapathy, performs that scene in multitude of layers. Also gotta give heavy credits to Lokesh for writing and executing that scene and really pushing Thalapathy to that extent. Because we're all better for it. Because we got a glorious all class performance for the ages. For the ages, man. Leo is going to stand the test of time and is going to be aging like fine wine, and I cannot wait to watch it again. With that said, that is my overall thoughts on Leo. There may be things that I forgot to mention, but I feel like I covered most of it and my general experience and thoughts on it. But again, I'm just one man. Let me know how y'all felt and what was the experience, and if y'all are planning to watch it again, because I do believe Leo is two different experiences just based on the character alone. And as for always, hope you'll enjoy this, and if you did, hit that thumbs up and see y'all on my next one. Salute.